I'm going to do is, instead of going through and creating this XAML from scratch, I've got the XAML, the actual markup, just sitting right here. I'm just going to drop that in, and I'll explain what this has got. First thing is that I got a couple of row definitions. I've got a stack panel for the top, which says, here's my games. One of the things that I got inside of my games is I also have a stack panel, zoom in here, that it has a text host URI. The reason I put this in here is because I do a lot of development, and a lot of times when I want to make changes to where my service is hosted, I defaulted to 1, but I want to be able to make changes at this while at runtime. So I just added a text box to allow me to make that change. But this visibility is set to collapse, so you won't normally see it. The other thing that I did is in my content panel is I added a list box that has the list of games. And then I have a data template for how I want the actual rows to be displayed. So I've got a binding for the winner, the rounds, the game name, and the create date, etc. The other thing that I've got is I have a button that I created down here for creating a new game. So the new game down here is going to take and create that new game with the text box as the game name. Now, first thing is that I can double click on this and add handlers and work with the data. The key is that when we load data, I don't necessarily want to go out and say, okay, well, show this message box. What I want to do is I want to go out and connect up to that service where the data is being hosted, and I want to be able then to download all of my games. So in our project, in our solution, let me go out here to our Solution Explorer, I'm going to go out and I'm going to add to this a service reference. And the service reference is going to be where we're running our stuff from. And I think we called it, let's go back over here. I can either use this one or I could use the other one. Go back. RPA and Windows Phone 7. And this is the actual service URI that I want to connect up to my data. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to copy that into my address here for this add service reference. Click on go, and it's going to then go out and interrogate that website. It says, yeah, here's something out here called DB entities. I've got game results, games, etc. I'm going to create a service reference in my code so I can get to that code later on. And we'll call this service RPA. And so this is then going to add that service RPA for me. So that adds a bunch of things. One is my service and the data services client and the pieces that I need. It also adds the service RPA code. If I was to view all files, I'd actually be able to see down here you've got your service EDMX, your reference map, and then actually the reference.rs contains all the code for executing and working with this. So for instance, if I want to go out and say resolve type from string or play games or add games or data service query, all of that stuff has been coded for me. But the key is that now I can go in here and I can create a service reference for that. So let me zoom in a little bit here because I can make it bigger. And I'm going to go to service RPA, and I'm going to use my demo DB entities, call this old service is equal, and just basically create that reference. Normally what I would do is say create that equal to a new instance of that, but I can do that down here. So I can say old service dot is equal to a new instance of my service RPA demo DB entities. I'm going to pass in a URI. And the URI I'm going to use is a new one, URI, that's going to take in my text host URI text box field. Because that's where I put it into the UI so that if it fails, I can always go back and change it later on. But I'm using the default of whatever value is inside of this. I could also have just as easily just said, hey, create it from a new URI. And just paste that in. So this is using that new URI from that spot. Once I've done this, then I can, in my, yes. Oh, it does expire. I believe the expiration of the token, when you go out to get it and pull it back, the ACS token that's coming back into that I get that has the claims attached to it is a token that I am now storing inside the application. That token is only valid for a given amount of time when I go out and do that a login conversation. But whether or not my web server, the host, is going to validate it or not is up to how I want to code that. Right? So when I create the credentials, there's a timestamp that's associated with that. I'm not pulling that out in my extract token claims here. I'm just pulling out the username and I'm storing and saving that username for just the simple demo. All right, so what I want to do is I want to load this data and I want to work with, from that service, the items that are in the actual, that are out there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a query to go against that list of items. We'll call it my games. Is equal to from G in whole service dot, and then you'll see down here I've got my games. And I can actually pull it from games or I can actually pull it from V games. I want to pull from V games where G dot and then my username or player is equal to the value in my user info dot username. And then I'm going to say order by G dot create date. I might do that descending so that the newest games are on top. And then say select the whole record. Now, this is using that service which has got that OData endpoint, which I created 3 objects, the games, V games, and game results. I'm pulling back all of those games where my player matches out to the value that came back in that token that was returned to me. And then from here, I can go out and I can say, okay, well, I want to run an asynchronous operation to actually run that query and then populate my list box. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to use a data service collection, which is a class that is created for me to allow me to do this. I'm using my service RPA games. There's my game list. And what the data service collection does is it handles the asynchronous processing for me. It's part of the data service client namespace. And so what I can do is I can say, okay, well, I'm going to create a asynchronous object that will go out and do this query for me. I can set my list box of games.item stores is equal to my game list. And then I can say, go out and load that list of games. Game list load async. And I'm going to pass this in the query of my games. So what this is doing is it's going out and it's creating the list of games. It's going to go out, it's going to populate this. And then it's going to basically work with the data that's there. So let's go into my toolbox. I'm just going to add the code from here. So it's using that basic item source, setting up my game list, using the RPA games, coming back, sets up the games, and then loads async that list of games. When we are on the page and the user, say, clicks on new game, we want to go out and create a new game for this. So we'll double click on that. That'll add an event handler for us. And in our new game, what we're going to do is I'm going to go out and I'm going to create a new instance of a game. So the way we're going to do that is I'm going to take my GUID, my game ID is equal to new GUID new ID. And then I'm going to, actually, I just pull in the code here. A little easier than watching me type. So what I'm doing is I'm going to go out, I'm going to set the new game is equal to a new game ID. I'm going to create a local record that is going to be a game record for the Service RPA game type. So this is actually going to be a Service RPA game. I'm going to instantiate it with a bunch of variables. One is going to be the current date, which is the create date of that game. I've got the game ID that I'm setting equal to that GUID. I've got the game name is equal to the game name's text, so the value of the name that we typed in the text box. And then the player is going to be using the user information for the name. That then associates this game with me. Then I call the service add to game, which is going to add that game that game record to our collection, and then I'm going to call the begin save changes. When that's done, it goes into the onsaved event, and in the onsaved event, I'll just add the code for that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, once it's done creating that game, I'm going to use the dispatcher to invoke a quick thing that'll go out and query out to where our result is, and it's going to navigate to a new page called playgame.xaml, and I'm going to pass to it a couple of arguments. So one of the arguments is going to be the game ID that we're playing with, and the other is the host where the game server is living, text host URI.